The night my parents erased me. It started with orange juice. Not a metaphor, not a last straw in some poetic sense. A real cup of orange juice, cold and bright, tipping from my daughter's hands and bleeding across beige carpet like it was signing our eviction papers. It was 10:43 p.m. The kind of late where a house feels sealed shut and every sound feels like a violation. Outside, snow didn't drift down gently the way holiday movies promise. It came sideways, sharp and impatient, whipped by wind that sounded like it had teeth. The porch light threw a hard cone of glare onto the steps, and the storm kept trying to swallow it. Inside, the silence was worse than the weather. My parents' house had two kinds of quiet. The normal kind, where people are sleeping, and the punished kind, where everyone is waiting for someone, usually me, to mess up. I'd lived under that second kind of quiet long enough to recognize it the way you recognize a smell that means smoke. My daughter, Emma, couldn't sleep. She was 5, which meant she wasn't a baby with simple needs. She had fears, opinions, and the emotional authority of a tiny CEO who just discovered adults don't actually control anything. "I don't like the wind," she whispered from her bed, eyes shiny in the dark. "It's just weather," I whispered back, because calm lies are part of motherhood. I lifted her carefully, already calculating the path down the hallway. Nighttime movement in my parents' home required strategy. Floors creaked. Doors judged you. Needs were drama. Noise was disrespect. Existing too loudly was treated like a character flaw. Emma's arms tightened around my neck as we moved. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old rules. Each step felt like I was stealing time from people who believed time belonged to them. We reached the kitchen. I flipped on the smallest light, barely aglow, trying not to wake the bear. I poured a little orange juice into a plastic cup, because it was the one thing that usually settled Emma's nerves. It felt harmless, measured, a solution measured in ounces. Then the upstairs creaked. A door opened. My stomach dropped before a word was spoken. My mother appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in irritation like a robe. "What are you doing?" "She couldn't sleep," I said softly. My sister, Claire, stepped out behind her. 17. Pretty. Permanently offended by other people's existence. She squinted at Emma like she was a stain on the air. "Are you serious?" she hissed. "I have school. Some of us actually have lives." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. I apologized the way other people blinked. My body learned young that apology was the fastest route to temporary peace. Emma reached for the cup. Her fingers slipped. The cup tipped. Orange juice spilled onto the carpet. For 1 second, nobody moved. Just one beat of stunned silence. Then my body went straight into fix-it mode. I dropped to my knees, grabbed paper towels, pressed hard, rubbed faster, like speed could erase consequences. "It's juice," my brain insisted. "It's not acid. It's not blood. It's not." Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. My father appeared like he'd been waiting for permission. "I'm done," he said flatly. "I'm done with this." My mother gasped as if the carpet had been attacked. "This house is not a daycare. I'll clean it," I said fast. "It was an accident. She's 5. Claire crossed her arms, voice cold and pleased. "She can't even control her own kid." My father's eyes landed on Emma. Not like she was a child. Then he said it. Clear. Practiced. Like the sentence had lived in his mouth for years. "We are done raising your mistake. Get out, and don't come back." The room stalled. My hands froze mid-wipe. I stared up from the floor. Paper towels clenched. Orange spreading in slow motion beneath my knees. "It's snowing," I said stupidly. "There's a storm. Where are we supposed to—" "I don't care," he cut in. My mother didn't look at me. She stared at the carpet, as if the carpet was the only victim in the room. I kept waiting for the part where someone softened. where anger cooled, where a mother sighed and said, "Fine, just tonight," where a father remembered he had a granddaughter, where reason arrived late but determined. No one stopped it. My father grabbed bags like he'd rehearsed this. My mother yanked Emma's coat from the hook and shoved it at me. My father twisted the house key off my ring and closed his fist around it. "These aren't yours anymore." The air left my lungs. "Please," I said, voice small. "Just tonight. I'll sleep in the car." "You will not," Claire said, too calm, too satisfied. "You're not staying here." The door opened. Cold punched in. Snow blew straight into the hallway. They pushed us out. The lock clicked. That tiny, final click broke something in me. Emma started sobbing immediately, full body, shaking cries. She stared at the orange stain on her sleeve and whispered, "I'm sorry. It's my fault." I crouched in the snow, wiped her cheeks, forced my voice steady. "No, never your fault. Never." Inside my head, panic screamed. "I have no plan. I have no one. I have a child." I loaded the bags into my old car, hands shaking so badly I fumbled the seatbelt latch. My phone battery hovered near dead. My bank account was a joke that didn't land anymore. I started the engine because sitting still felt like drowning. "Where are we going?" Emma asked from the back seat. "An adventure," I said too brightly, because sometimes lies are the only thing holding the sky up. The road was ice. Snow blurred the headlights into a white tunnel. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle. I gripped the steering wheel like it could keep my life from sliding away. I didn't see the other car until the intersection. A blur. A slide. Impact. The sound knocked the breath from my lungs. Emma screamed once sharp, then dissolved into sobbing. My heart tried to claw out of my chest. I twisted around, scanning her face, her arms, her legs. "Talk to me, baby. Are you hurt?" "I'm scared," she cried. No blood. No broken bones. Just terror. A woman approached through the storm, steady and controlled. She looked into my back seat, took in Emma's face, the bags, the whole picture. "Why are you out in this weather with a 5-year-old?" she asked quietly. I tried to lie. "I couldn't. We got kicked out," I said. "Tonight." Her expression changed like a switch flipped. "What's your name?" "Lena," I said. She blinked. "Lena Moore." I froze. "I haven't seen you since." She stopped herself, eyes narrowing with memory. Because the truth was this. I had been disappearing for years, and the woman standing in the snow wasn't a stranger at all. I hadn't known the past could find me again. I didn't realize how close I was to breaking until she told me to stop driving. The woman stood in the snow beside my crumpled bumper like she had nowhere else to be, calm in a way that made my panic feel louder. "You're not driving anywhere else tonight," she said. My mouth opened on instinct. "I have to." "No," she replied. "You don't." Because my whole life had been built around having to. I had to be quiet. I had to be grateful. I had to fix whatever broke, usually myself, before anyone could accuse me of being the problem. She pointed toward a small parking lot. "Hazards on. Pull in slowly. I'll follow you." My pride tried to protest. Then Emma whimpered, "Mommy," from the back seat, and my pride sat down. I turned on the hazards and eased the car forward, tires sliding as if the road wanted to throw me back into the storm. She followed and parked behind us. She took 2 quick photos of both bumpers, then tucked her phone away like the dent belonged to a later version of the world. "Is she hurt?" she asked, already peering through my back window. "No," I said too fast. "Just scared." She opened her back door and pulled out a thick blanket. Not dramatic. Practical. The kind of thing you keep when you've lived long enough to know life gets cold. She wrapped Emma up and crouched so their eyes were level. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. "We're getting warm now." Emma looked at her, then checked my face. "Lock your car," the woman told me. The click sounded too small for the night we were living. I grabbed our bags with clumsy hands, dropped one, and she handed it back without comment. "It's okay," she said, like she meant it. We climbed into her car. Heat blasted from the vents. My lungs stuttered as if they'd forgotten what warmth felt like. Emma curled under the blanket in the back seat, her sobs softening into exhausted hiccups. After a minute, the woman asked quietly, "Do you have anyone you can call?" No, I answered. No excuse, no explanation, just the truth. She nodded once. "Okay." We pulled up to a modest house with warm windows and a shoveled walkway. Nothing flashy, nothing cold, just stable. Inside, heat wrapped around us so suddenly my eyes burned. Emma sagged the moment the door shut, her body finally letting go of fear. The woman disappeared for 30 seconds and came back with thick socks, hot chocolate that smelled like actual effort, and another folded blanket. Emma blinked up at her, suspicious even through exhaustion. The woman paused. "I'm trying," she said. "Is that okay?" Emma looked at me. I nodded. "Yeah, baby." Emma's eyes closed again. Sleep took her fast, like her body had been running on borrowed power. I stayed perched on the edge of the couch, coat still on, braced for the part where kindness turns into conditions. It didn't come. My hands shook, so I opened my bag just to give them something to do, and a blue lanyard peeked out, faded fabric from a life I wasn't supposed to miss anymore. The woman's eyes flicked to it. She went very still. I shoved it down too fast, embarrassed by the version of me that used to have plans. Then she said my name like it was something she'd practiced not saying for years. "Lena?" My stomach dropped. Her posture, her voice, the way she held silence like a skill I knew. "No," I whispered, "because recognition can feel like falling." Her expression softened. "It's me," she said quietly. "Dr. Hannah Reed." The room tilted. She'd been my mentor from the Future Scholars Program, the only adult who had ever looked at me like I was more than a problem. "I looked for you," she said. "You vanished." My throat tightened. "I didn't." "You don't have to explain perfectly," Hannah said. "Just tell me what happened." So I did, in rough pieces. Pregnant at 15. Pulled out of school. Homeschool that turned into nothing. No diploma. No program. No goodbye. Years in my parents' house, paying rent in humiliation. Tonight, orange juice, a slammed door, a stolen key. Hannah listened without flinching. When I finished, she asked one question, practical as a lifeline. "What do you still need from that house?" "My wallet," I said immediately. Then the real risk surfaced. My EpiPen, severe allergy. Hannah's face hardened absolute. "We're not gambling with that." "I'm not going back," I said quickly. "Of course you're not," she replied, already reaching for her phone. "We'll do this safely." She slid a notepad toward me. "Write essentials. Anything with your names. Any medical items." My pen shook as I wrote. But for the first time it felt like I was building something instead of begging. Hannah called non-emergency. I caught fragments. Civil standby. Lockout. Minor child. Emergency medication. Avoid confrontation. Police. My phone lit up with my father's name, then my mother's, then my father again. The screen flashed like a warning signal. Hannah didn't tell me what to do. She just sat closer, like she wanted me to feel the option of not being alone. I answered, "Hello?" My father's shouting hit immediately. "What did you do?" "We had police at our door." My mother cut in, furious. "How dare you call police on your own parents? Do you know how this looks?" There it was. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Is Emma safe?" Just image. "I needed my EpiPen," I said, voice steadier than I expected. "That's it." My father scoffed. "Always a story." The old reflex surged, apologize, shrink, smooth it over. Instead, I heard myself say, "I'm hanging up." They kept yelling. I ended the call. Click. No punishment arrived. An officer returned later with a small plastic bag. My wallet, Emma's folder, my EpiPen. He asked simple questions. "Are you safe here? Is your child safe?" And I said yes. And the word tasted strange, like a language I was finally allowed to learn. When the door closed behind him, Hannah turned to me and asked, "Are you hungry?" Normalcy can be its own kind of shock. My body didn't trust it. I kept listening for footsteps, for the crack of my father's voice, for the familiar slam of a door. Hannah moved through her own kitchen like calm was normal, setting my EpiPen on the counter where I could see it, leaving a glass of water beside it like a promise. Help without humiliation felt like stepping onto ground that might collapse until it didn't. Later, when Emma slept curled under a blanket that didn't feel like a trap, Hannah said, "You can stay here. For tonight," I whispered. She shook her head once. "Until you're stable. Until you're safe." Emma's eyes fluttered open like she'd been listening from the edge of sleep. Hannah leaned close. "Yes, sweetheart. You're warm here." Outside, the wind still howled. Inside, the quiet felt different, less like waiting, more like permission. The first night I slept somewhere I hadn't earned through apology, my body didn't know how to rest. I lay fully dressed on the edge of Hannah's guest bed, shoes lined by the door like I might need to run. My phone sat face down on the nightstand, silent and suspicious. Every sound jolted me awake, the heater clicking, the refrigerator humming, the house settling into itself. Normal noises, my brain insisted, while my nervous system screamed danger. At some point before dawn, a realization landed with terrifying clarity. No one was coming to yell at me. No footsteps charging down the hall. No voice demanding to know why I was still awake. No punishment arriving because I'd taken up space. The silence stayed gentle. That scared me more than the storm. Morning arrived carefully, pale light seeping through the curtains. I checked my phone out of reflex. No missed calls, no texts, no new threats. The absence felt unnatural, like standing on ground that hadn't collapsed yet but still might. In the kitchen, Hannah was already up, coffee brewing. She slid a mug toward me without a word, black with a splash of milk, exactly how I used to drink it. I stared. "You remembered," she shrugged lightly. "You always said sugar made you jittery." Something in my chest twisted. "Still asleep," Hannah said. She didn't move all night. Of course she hadn't. For the first time in her life, her body didn't have to listen for shouting. Hannah sat across from me at the small table. Not looming. Not interrogating. Just present. "Where do you work?" she asked. "Grocery store," I said. "Stocking. Early mornings. And today, I missed my shift." "We'll call," she said. "We." The word landed like a door unlocking. Hannah put the phone on speaker before I could shrink out of it. I explained, "Weather, accident, emergency." My manager grumbled, sighed, then told me to come in tomorrow. When the call ended, my shoulders dropped an inch, as if my body had been holding them up purely out of dread. Emma wandered in then, hair wild, eyes sleepy. She looked around like she expected the room to vanish. "We're still here?" she asked. "Yes," I said quickly. "We're still here." She nodded, then asked the question that made my throat tighten. "Are they still mad?" The truth was heavy. My parents didn't have a mad setting. They had a permanent disappointment setting, and it didn't come with a cure. But Emma didn't need that truth. She needed safety she could hold. "We're safe," I told her. She accepted it like kids do, fully, without footnotes. After I dropped her at school, smiling too hard at the office staff, pretending I hadn't spent the night in a stranger's house. I returned to Hannah's and stood awkwardly in the kitchen, waiting for the moment when help turned into conditions. Hannah looked up from her coffee. "You don't have to wear that face here." "What face?" "The one that says you're bracing for impact." A laugh escaped me, sharp and humorless. "Old habit." She nodded, like she understood habits that live in your bones. Then she said it casually, like she was checking the weather. "You never finished school." Shame rushed in, familiar and fast. "No GED either?" I shook my head. She didn't ask why. She didn't sigh. She didn't do the disappointed adult thing that makes you feel smaller. She just asked, "Do you want to?" The question felt illegal. Wanting things had always been treated like arrogance in my house. Needs were tolerated. Wants were punishable. "I work," I said automatically. "Emma's in school. I don't have time." "She's in school," Hannah repeated gently. "And you're smart." "That was years ago," I snapped before I could stop myself. "It doesn't count." "It was 5 years ago," she corrected. "Not 50. I hated that she was right. She slid a notepad across the table. Not inspirational quotes. A plan. 2 hours a night, she said. 4 nights a week. We start small. We don't negotiate with shame. I stared at the paper like it might explode. "And if I fail, then you take it again," Hannah said simply. Failure isn't a moral issue. That night, I opened a math book for the first time in years. My hands shook, not because it was hard, but because it reminded me of everything that had been taken. I wasn't bad at it. I never had been. I'd just been told I wasn't allowed to be good anymore. My schedule became intentionally ridiculous. Work at dawn, school drop-off, study at Hannah's table while Emma colored beside me, dinner, bath, bedtime stories, then another hour with my brain begging me to quit. Some nights I wanted to throw the book across the room, not because I couldn't understand it, but because understanding it made me furious. Furious that my parents stole my education and called it discipline. Furious that I had to rebuild something that should have been mine. The first time I passed a GED practice test, Emma jumped up and down like I'd won a championship. "My mom is smart," she announced. I snorted. "My mom is stubborn." When I passed the real test, I cried in my car in the grocery store parking lot, like a woman with zero emotional regulation. Emma asked why I was crying. "Happy," I told her. She nodded. Okay. Like happy crying made perfect sense. The first day I sat in a classroom again, I kept waiting for someone to tap my shoulder and tell me I didn't belong. The other students looked younger than me, or maybe they just looked unburdened. They complained about parking, about professors, about the cafeteria coffee. I wrote notes like, my life depended on it, because in a way it did. During break, I checked my phone twice, certain the school would call about Emma, certain my manager would suddenly fire me, certain something would prove the ground was still unstable. Nothing happened. On the walk to my car, my knees went weak anyway. I leaned against the door, breathing hard, embarrassed by how fragile I felt. Hannah had texted once. "You did it. Pick up Emma and come home." Home. The word still sounded borrowed, but it held. That night, Emma traced letters beside me while I studied. "When I'm big," she said. "I'm going to college too." I swallowed and answered, "Yeah, baby, you will. I'll be there, watching you win." Community college came next because tuition doesn't care about resilience narratives. I kept my job, took classes when I could, learned to live in the space between not enough time and doing it anyway. Hannah didn't rescue me with speeches. She rescued me with logistics. A ride when my car wouldn't start, babysitting when Emma got sick the night before an exam, an email to a professor who acted like accommodations were a personal insult. I didn't become fearless. I became practiced. And somewhere between practice tests and packed lunches, Survival started turning into momentum. I could feel it building quietly, stubbornly, like a new muscle learning its job. The day I walked back onto a university campus, my hands were steady, but my stomach wasn't. It felt like stepping into an alternate timeline, the one where I hadn't been erased. Students rushed past with backpacks and coffee cups, complaining about exams like their futures weren't balancing on a thread. I clutched my schedule too tightly, as if paper could anchor me to the ground. Emma skipped beside me, pointing out squirrels like this was just another normal morning. She carried her little lunchbox with stickers on it, and the kind of casual optimism only a child can afford. Halfway across the quad, I saw it, the building where my mentorship program used to meet. Tall windows, the same doors I'd stopped walking through the day. My parents decided my pregnancy was a family emergency, not a teenager's life. My chest tightened so hard it felt like the past had hands. I stopped without meaning to. Hannah noticed and slowed, standing beside me. She didn't ask what I was looking at. She didn't force me to talk. She just said, "You don't have to go in." "I know," I whispered, but I stood there anyway, watching students come and go, feeling the ghost of myself pressed against my ribs. I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of remembering who I'd been before someone told me I wasn't allowed to become her. Student-parent life on campus was brutal in ways the brochures never mention. People talked about time management, like childcare could be summoned by willpower. Professors said things like, "We all have priorities," with smiles that sounded like warnings. Study groups formed at 9 p.m., as if everyone had a quiet apartment and no bedtime stories to read. I learned where the student moms gathered: bathrooms, stairwells, quiet corners near vending machines. We spoke in lowered voices, trading notes like contraband, always apologizing, always one emergency away from dropping out. So I started helping. At first, it was small. Shared notes, a spreadsheet of professors who were decent about deadlines, babysitting swaps scribbled into a group chat, a running list titled, "Who can you call when everything breaks?" Then one night, Hannah slid an envelope across the table. "Funding opportunity," she said. "Write a proposal." I laughed without humor. "I'm not qualified." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "You're living it." So I wrote it. I wrote about how intelligence doesn't matter if you don't have childcare, how ambition collapses when one sick day can knock you out of school, how people call you unreliable when what you really are is outnumbered. We got the grant, then another. With the first funding, we created emergency microgrants: rent, utility shutoffs, car repairs, surprise daycare deposits, small amounts that kept lives from snapping. With the second, we partnered with a childcare center for discounted drop-in hours. Not perfect, not enough, but better than nothing. And better than nothing is sometimes the difference between staying enrolled and disappearing. The first time a mom told me, "This kept me in school," I locked myself in a bathroom stall and cried for exactly 30 seconds because I still had class to get to. Somewhere along the way, Hannah's kindness stopped feeling like charity and started feeling like choice. Emma's drawings appeared on Hannah's fridge. Snacks Emma liked showed up in the pantry without anyone asking. A small toothbrush appeared in the upstairs bathroom, quietly permanent. Hannah never announced it. She simply made space. And space became a kind of love. One night, Emma fell asleep on Hannah's couch with homework on her lap. Hannah covered her with a blanket and stood there a beat too long, watching her breathe. The question slipped out before I could swallow it. "Why are you doing this?" Hannah didn't answer immediately. She watched Emma, eyes soft, like she was listening to a quieter truth than my words. "I thought I had time," she said finally. "I kept postponing the family part. Career first, tenure first, later." Her voice stayed controlled. Her hands didn't. "This house has been quiet for a long time," she added. I tried to lighten it, because tenderness still made me nervous. Her mouth twitched. Something like that. Then she looked at me and said the sentence that rewired something deep in my chest. I chose you, Hannah said. Not because I needed a project, but because no child should grow up believing she's a mistake. By the time graduation approached, Emma was 10. Old enough to remember the storm not as a blur but as a scar. Old enough to understand that some people don't get better just because time passes. I hadn't seen my parents in years. Not in grocery aisles. Not through texts. Silence had settled into something solid. Not peace. Clarity. Then my name appeared in the commencement program. Lena Moore, student speaker. Founder. Student Parent Support Network. I stared at the page like it might correct itself. Hannah stood beside me, arms crossed. You don't have to do it. I knew what she meant. Once you speak, you lose control of the story. Once you name the wound, people start looking for who caused it. And I knew they'd be there. My sister was graduating from the same university. Same ceremony. Same auditorium. Same room. The night before, Emma asked, "Are you nervous?" "Yes," I admitted. "Why?" "Because people from my old life will be there." She considered this, then said, "Do they get to decide who you are now?" That question settled something in me like a stone finding the bottom of a river. Backstage, my mouth went dry anyway. My palms were damp, and for a second my brain tried to drag me backward to that porch light, to the click of the lock, to Emma's little voice saying it was her fault. Hannah stood with me near a curtain, close enough that I could feel her calm like heat. "You can stop at any time," she said. I shook my head. "If I stop, they win." Emma appeared with her program folded into a paper fan. "I'm sitting where you can see me," she said, serious as a promise. She squeezed my fingers once, then walked toward the front row without looking back, like she trusted me to follow her into the light. Graduation day arrived in a buzz of families, flowers, cameras. I scanned the crowd before I meant to, and there they were. My mother, dressed perfectly. My father, rigid with authority he no longer owned. Claire beside them, scrolling on her phone like boredom was armor. They hadn't seen me yet. For a moment, the old instinct rose, shrink, disappear, stay quiet. Then the announcer spoke my name. "Please welcome our student speaker, Lena Moore." Applause rose, polite at first, curious. I stepped into the light, and Claire froze mid-clap. My mother's face drained. My father leaned forward, staring like he could undo time. I reached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and felt the room tilt toward me. I wasn't a kid on their carpet anymore. I was the one holding the story. The moment I stepped up to the microphone, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't shaking. My parents were in the audience, the people who had trained my body to flinch at footsteps, who had made apology my first language, who had called my child a mistake and locked us out into a storm. They were here. Close enough that I could picture the exact angle of my father's disapproval, and still my hands were steady. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Lena Moore. I'm a graduate, and I'm a mom." 9. The room leaned in. Phones lowered. Attention tightened. "When my daughter was 5, I continued, my parents looked at me and said, 'We are done raising your mistake. Get out, and don't come back.'" Silence dropped like a curtain. Not a cough, not a shuffle, just the weight of people realizing they are hearing something real. "They took my house key," I said, voice level. I didn't need to embellish it. The truth carried its own gravity. "I sat in my car that night with a child asking me if we were going home," I said. And I had to answer like a mother, even while I still felt like a scared kid myself. Somewhere in the crowd, someone made a small sound: pain, recognition, both. "And that same night," I went on. A few uneasy laughs rippled through. Because sometimes laughter is how people survive hearing hard things. "Nobody was hurt," I said. But I remember thinking, of course. I paused, letting the room breathe. The woman who got out of the other car didn't care about the bumper, I said. She asked me one question. Where are you going? Silence thickened. I said, I don't know. You could hear breathing. She took us home, I said. She gave us a home. I turned slightly toward the front row. That woman is Dr. Hannah Reed. Applause surged fast, loud, no longer ceremonial. Hannah didn't stand. She didn't wave. She just nodded once, eyes bright. As if the moment belonged where it belonged. To the work. Not the credit. That's why the Student Parent Support Network exists, I continued. Because being smart doesn't matter if you don't have childcare. Ambition doesn't matter if one sick day can knock you out of school. And no one should have to choose between feeding their child and finishing a degree. I looked across the faces, students, parents, grandparents, people who had never been told their existence was inconvenient. If someone has ever called you a mistake, I finished, they were wrong. I stepped back. The applause didn't stop right away. It rolled over me like a wave, and for a second I felt something I'd never felt in my parents' house. My voice mattered, and it didn't cost me my safety. After the ceremony, they found me. Of course they did. My mother was crying already, makeup smeared in a way she would have called embarrassing if it belonged to anyone else. My father's jaw worked like he was chewing down the urge to control the moment. Claire hovered behind them, face tight, eyes darting. We were scared, my mother said, grabbing my hands. We didn't know what to do. My father nodded stiffly. We thought we were doing the right thing. I listened, really listened. Not because they deserved my attention, but because I wanted to know what their version of the story sounded like out loud. And then I said the words that surprised even me. I forgive you. Relief flooded their faces too quickly, too clean, like forgiveness was a receipt they could wave around. But I'm not coming back, I added. The relief cracked into confusion. Family is family, my mother insisted, reaching for me again. I stepped back, gentle and firm. No, I said quietly. Family is who shows up. Behind me, Emma stood with Hannah. Her small hand wrapped around Hannah's finger. She looked calm. Not numb. Calm. Like she knew exactly where safety lived now. My father's voice hardened. So you're just going to cut us off? After everything we did for you? There it was. The invoice. I took a breath. You didn't do for me, I said. You controlled me. And when I didn't fit the version you wanted, you threw a child into a storm. My mother sobbed. We're proud of you. Pride without accountability is a costume. I didn't say that. I didn't need to. The truth was already standing between us. I'm glad you came, I said, because I meant it in the only way that was honest. I'm glad you saw I survived, but you don't get access to my life. I turned, took Emma's hand, and walked away. No dramatic music, no cinematic slow motion, just steps, each one quieter than the last. In the weeks after graduation, the emails came. Long, emotional ones. Apologies wrapped in excuses. Regret without ownership. I read each message once, then archived it. Forgiveness, for me, didn't mean reconciliation. It meant refusing to keep bleeding so other people could feel healed. Healing arrived in details. Emma stopped waking from nightmares. My shoulders stopped living near my ears. I stopped rehearsing explanations before asking for help. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. One night, brushing our teeth side by side, Emma said casually, "You don't get quiet sad anymore." I froze. Quiet sad? When you smile but your eyes aren't, she explained, like it was obvious. That nearly broke me, because she was right. Somewhere between packed lunches, late night studying, grant meetings, and ordinary laughter, the part of me that stayed braced had started to loosen. The network grew, quietly, steadily. Childcare partnerships, emergency funds, mentors for student parents. A list of numbers you can call at midnight when everything breaks. Not flashy, just real. And sometimes, when a new student mom sat at my office doorway, with that hunted look in her eyes, I'd remember the porch light, the snow, the click of the lock, and I'd hear Hannah's calm voice in my head. "You're warm here." Months later, Hannah and I sat on the porch while Emma rode her bike in crooked loops across the driveway. The sky was pink, harmless. Hannah asked, "Do you ever regret speaking?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "I regret staying silent so long." Emma rang her bell like punctuation. She yelled, "Mom, no hands now!" People still say it, of course, but they're your parents. As if biology is a lifetime permission slip. So here's my question for you. Honestly, no perfect answers required. Comment 0 if you believe forgiveness means reconciliation, no matter what. Comment 1 if you believe forgiveness doesn't require access to your life. And if you've ever been called too much, or a mistake, or made to believe your survival was an inconvenience, stick around. Not for drama, for the quiet rebellion of building a life that doesn't shrink. Because sometimes the bravest thing you do isn't yelling. It's choosing peace and keeping the door locked.